You found out, didn't you? Her laugh resounded into the shadows. Our first night together was the one. Her skin seemed strangely different to the touch. She laughed at my surprised retractions. Oh, what's happening? I had to inquire out of pure curiosity. She squinted at me and spoke in a predatory, feline voice. She said, very slowly, curiosity can be dangerous, baring her skin. She was quite lovely. 10 years later, I can still recall. Julian is my name. At the time, I had turned 36. I was employed by a pharmaceutical company in sales. I was their top salesperson, not to brag. Catherine, my wife, hailed from a well-known family of doctors. My father-in-law planned the marriage. I met Catherine at the matchmaker's function, and she seemed like a refined lady. We were married because I could see no reason not to accept. The company's executives were happy to have this beneficial relationship. I was the envy of my contemporaries for pulling off such a coup. I became even more immersed in my profession after getting married in an attempt to block out the outside world. I never would have thought that someone would be at my side who didn't like my achievement. At my level, there are a lot of workers competing for promotions. Even in the upper echelons, there are factions that are hidden from view. Becoming favored by the powerful group in high management, managing a large number of hospitals, and making a name for myself in the sales department were all necessary for success. To be honest, though, I had no interest in any of that. All I wanted was to use our products to aid patients. It's not a lofty concept. My sister lost her battle with childhood cancer. She could have been saved if there had been a treatment for that. I think medicine has great power because of this. I believe that it is vitally important for people's lives, and I have helped patients by using it. I genuinely liked this work and felt proud of it. My future, which had seemed to be going well, was abruptly cast in doubt. Finally, the much-awaited new medication, on which we had to incur substantial development costs, was made available. Making our team the best in the country for this kind of sales excited my boss. In our sales meetings, he stressed how quickly the hospitals we oversaw had adopted it. The biggest impact came from the hospitals on my team that I managed. Physicians in our region are hesitant to employ novel medications unless my hospitals accept them. For safety reasons, some physicians, however, would rather hold off on utilizing new ones for a predetermined amount of time. However, my supervisor vigorously promoted sales to the physicians under my supervision. It turns out that my employer and this hospital's chief of surgery were tight. My supervisor oversaw the surgery department, while I was in charge of the other departments. Although my manager proposed that we share roles, it seemed like I was in charge. He implored the surgical chief to administer the new medication. During that period, it was still customary for pharmaceutical companies to host many dinners and drinks, and my boss would frequently use my entertainment allowance to go out to drinks with the chief of surgery. This new chemical was an amazing treatment that might work well for patients who had not responded well to previous medications. I thus sincerely hoped that those who were having trouble would think about utilizing it. It was necessary to use caution when utilizing it, though. Precautions are always advised when using medications, particularly when side effects are a possibility. Certain patients may not be appropriate candidates for their use. It is surprising that my employer did not support the proper use, which is arguably the most crucial objective. Consequently, the head of surgery gave the medication to a patient who never should have received it. The patient experienced serious adverse effects. The pharmaceutical department failed to recognize a major event. As soon as the side effect report arrived, I hurried to the hospital to gather comprehensive information. I was shocked to learn about the case. The prescribing physician asserted ignorance of the fact that the patient was someone to whom the medication should never have been given. I felt terrible about delegating tasks to my supervisor. My supervisor became pale. When this got to be a big problem for the company, my manager put all the responsibility on me. Actually, the name I had on file for the hospital's manager was mine. I had internally handled the entertainment spending reports as directed by my supervisor. The bosses summoned me in and presented me with paperwork and receipts from restaurants and lounges I had never been to yet processed. It was difficult to persuade them despite my repeated explanations of the circumstances due to the enormous weight of the evidence. My boss, looking arrogant, was seated close to the executives, but I could see it was all a bluff from the way his fingertips trembled. After witnessing the darker side of human nature, I became disillusioned with living a life dictated by success metrics. I told the executives who were blaming me that I had done everything on my own initiative. I announced that I would accept accountability and step down. The room fell hushed at my direct approach. I pondered whether my supervisor would make an effort to retain me, but he didn't, so I quit with ease. I thought I could make it somehow because I had some savings. I had that thought. Catherine welcomed me with rage in her eyes when I got home. My father-in-law had apparently previously been in touch with her. She was upset with me for leaving my work at the first opportunity. She was holding some papers tightly, and I knew right away that these were divorce papers. It was almost comically careful. She was prepared to quickly sever ties with a husband who was no longer valuable. She must have heeded some of her father's counsel. Since everything seemed like such a headache, I immediately signed the divorce agreement. Catherine received the house as a present from her father. I said to myself, I'll let you know once I decide where I'm going, and turned to leave. Surprisingly, I didn't feel the slightest bit of remorse, even though I knew I wouldn't be returning. I could have found myself pleading with Catherine in tears if she had hesitated even a little bit to accept the divorce papers. However, Catherine seized the documents with aggression, treating me like a piece of trash. All she required from me was my social standing and income. With this knowledge, I laughed ironically. I started looking for a place to reside the following day. It was difficult to locate a realtor who would work with me because I was unemployed. They called me a unemployed man, despite the fact that I had an income certification. I chose to contact an old acquaintance for assistance because I was in a difficult situation. I did recall that he was employed in the real estate sector. My companion was taken aback by my circumstances and astounded by my present condition. "You've always been like this, haven't you?" he asked, laughing. He requested me to wait for 3 minutes, and he called me back exactly at that moment. He informed me to come right away after finding an apartment. I quickly made note of the address and left. I found myself in an old-fashioned, Western-style residence after following the directions. The flat featured a single entrance and a nostalgic vibe. The rooms appeared dispersed along a hallway. At the entrance were mailboxes labeled with room numbers. My acquaintance advised me to speak with the landlord. I called out, "Excuse me," because there was no doorbell. From the other end of the hallway, I heard footsteps pattering. A gorgeous young woman with long black hair and porcelain-like white complexion suddenly materialized. "Are you Julian? I wonder. I am aware of you." "Nancy, son, the landlord is me." "It's nice to meet you," she remarked, extending her hand to the right. Startled, I gave her a composed handshake. Her fingers and wrists were thin, and I was shocked to find that I was reluctant to release the handshake. Although she went by Nancy Popson, others just called her Nancy. This flat, which was divided into 2 smaller ones, was used only by women. She requested for my assistance with hard lifting, but said there was no need for a deposit or broker charge. Nancy smiled as I responded yes, then continued, "Well then, consider our deal done, Julian." She said, "I heard you worked for a pharmaceutical company," and extended her hand to give me the keys. Our common buddy must have told her that. I did, indeed. I quit from my position there after many years of employment, I added. I later said that as soon as I quit my employment, I was served with a divorce decree. Nancy started laughing out loud. When I admitted that I had left my house immediately after that, she appeared genuinely astonished. She added, dazzling me with her smile, "Well, there's nothing wrong with starting over." When I assured her I would find jobs shortly, she seemed unconcerned. My new life so started. These apartments housed a mixed population of students, novelists, and single mothers. A mother was among them, fleeing her violent husband. I was terrified because I didn't think I had the physical power to handle them all, and I felt like they were depending on me. All of them, nevertheless, were friendly individuals who laughed off my divorce. I began to get to know Nancy better. She had outlived her spouse and was a 30-year-old widow. It seems that she had inherited the apartment from her father. Her late spouse was a physician. It's a small world, I thought. At some time, it seemed like we might have just missed each other. I began working at a nearby bookstore part-time. Though I preferred a part-time work that allowed me more free time, I did explore taking a full-time career. I started doing some basic repairs on my days off because the apartment required a lot of physical labor. Every now and then Nancy would bring me bread that she had baked as a pastime, or share a little of her dinner. My attraction to her increased as we spent more time together. She assisted the other apartment residents in a nonchalant manner. It was comfortable to live in, even with the building's age, and the corridors were always clean. She even appeared to occasionally assist the kids of the single moms with their homework. She looked interested in me, just as I was drawn to her. She frequently paid me visits at the bookshop where I worked part-time and inquired about my prior employment. We quickly got to work preparing dinner for each other. It was the first time I had ever touched her skin in the dark, but we were getting closer. She appeared even more gorgeous than normal the first time I stayed at her place. So gorgeous, it almost took my breath away. That day, when I touched her hand, her skin was just as chilly. I reflexively withdrew my touch from her skin because I sensed something off. It felt too strange for her skin to be human. As I withdrew my hand, Nancy fixed her gaze on me. She giggled when she realized how surprised I was. "Sorry, what's going on?" I asked her, losing all composure in my frazzled state. She simply grinned and squinted her eyes. "You know, curiosity kills. Are you certain that this won't be a regret?" With eyes as intense as a ferocious lion, she gave me a hard look and exposed her skin. There were numerous surgical scars still visible on it. It had to have been a serious wound. Her fair skin bore marks that almost looked like a pattern of flowers. She looked into my face with a trace of amusement, and I was dumbfounded at the stunning severity of the scars. "Did I not warn you that you would regret it?" "I'm not for you to touch," she stated icily. Slowly, she gestured to the door. "Leave this room and regret hurting me." She had a voice I had never heard before, and she threw me off the bed. "How out those wounds? Why not?" I inquired. Nancy merely chuckled. Then she started talking softly. Nancy's spouse was employed at a general hospital as a surgeon in the past. Apparently, he was accused of working in cooperation with the pharmaceutical business, which prevented him from doing the surgery that he was supposed to. A stand-in physician operated on the patient, who passed away during the procedure. Her husband was, of course, unrelated to the pharmaceutical corporation. The person who placed the blame on him was the chief of the surgery department. Her spouse had to resign from his position, accepting full responsibility. Every time he left the hospital, he was depressed. Nancy was glad when he mentioned that he was going to go hiking, as that was his hobby. Despite the winter, she sent her seasoned husband forth. She last saw him alive at that point. Not even after his planned fall did he return. He was discovered dead in a snow cave following a search. No suicide note was found. Was it an accident, or did he walk up the snow-capped peak to take his own life? Nancy, who felt guilty for not stopping him, presumably tried to pursue him and hurled herself off a cliff. She thankfully made it out alive, but her body now bears some serious wounds. "You can't mean the pharmaceutical company is?" I felt uneasy, and I found it difficult to speak. My manager told me about a controversy that one of my senior colleagues started. "You're correct. It's the organization where you are employed, Nancy remarked in a tense tone. She said she hated me just for knowing that I was a sales representative for that company, even though she was perfectly aware that I had nothing to do with it. Nancy laughed and added, I thought it's okay for you to get hurt with something you can never have. She appeared to be crying, even though she was laughing. Despite her awareness of her illogical actions, she persisted in her desire to harm me. She must have had intense emotions. Nancy's late husband is never far from her thoughts. She plans to carry his sorrows with her into the future. I trembled. Was Nancy bringing this to my attention only? If only a tiny bit, I wanted to think there were feelings for me. If not, I appreciate what you've done so far. Tomorrow, I'm heading out. This place is too small for me to remain in. I've made the decision to depart tomorrow. I took a brief hiatus during my lengthy existence. My times at the apartment were really quiet. That would be helpful if you could. Though she wasn't the type to do that, I harbored a small hope that she might stop me. She turned away from me, as if she was tired of looking at my face. She didn't give my face a glance till the very end. I hurried to the real estate office early the following day to hunt for a new flat. I was able to rent a place because I wasn't jobless this time. I got up and started walking right away. It was an easy relocation because I didn't have many possessions to begin with. I wanted to hunt for work after I moved out of this flat. My hiatus from life was ended. I gave them a month's notice that I was quitting my part-time job at the bookshop. Now, there's no turning back. Nancy didn't appear until the last end when the neighbors bid me farewell as I left the flat. I gave one of the tenants the keys. I chose to leave a thank you message for their kindness with the keys. I pondered whether Nancy would see my email. Most likely, she won't read it. Something told me. I was hired for the same sales position a month later. I'm a real estate agent. In the end, I was hired by that real estate company. I'm enjoying every day, even though I'm learning a lot in a new field. And I was able to move today at last. My new location, that's the old apartment complex. I've returned to that cozy flat. I was curious about the expression you would make upon your return. Nancy was standing at the doorway, her arms folded, waiting for me. Her words were harsh, but there was peace in her eyes. I said, I'd like to start over. Nancy burst out laughing at what I had said. Nancy refused to go along with my suggestion that we begin by introducing ourselves, calling it ridiculous. She finally accepted after several inquiries. Even if we start over, it might be the same. If that's the case, we'll restart from scratch, I said casually. Nancy smiled sardonically. I wish to be standing beside her when she finally makes things right. I will give her the biggest congrats I can manage if she decides to go with someone else. What was your impression of it? We will be inspired by your channel subscription. In the following video, I'll see you.